So there's nothing like a potential client asking you for your rate to make you question everything about your freelance writing business. And if you Google how much to charge as a freelance writer, you're going to get some very cookie cutter answers and frankly bad advice about calculating your ideal hourly rate based on how long you think the project's going to take, account for taxes, blah, blah, blah. And as a freelance writer for the last 10 years, I can tell you that that is not how to build a successful freelance business. Anything based on an hourly rate punishes you for getting better at your job because it simply doesn't take as long, even though that's because of your experience and expertise. So instead of doing that, we're skipping Google. I'm going to show you my exact method that I've used over the years based on supply and demand instead of any type of hourly rate. All right, the first thing you need to know when figuring out how much you should charge as a freelance writer is just a baseline understanding of rates. So I have a free downloadable PDF that lists out several databases and other online resources with actual price points from real life freelance writers that they've either charged or have received from specific publications. So this gives you a very clear idea of ranges if you have no idea of what to even throw out for different types of projects. Especially if you're newer to freelancing, it's important to browse these kind of resources and websites to get an idea of price range, especially for the type of clients and industry that you're targeting. I'll put that rate setting guide link in the description box, and I think it's so important to understand this because when I was a newish freelancer, I really thought like 10 cents a word was the holy grail, and obviously I was charging way less than I should have been for too long. So now there's a lot more rate transparency in the freelance industry. A lot of people contributing to these guides and databases so that we all have a better understanding of how much we can charge. All right, once you have that sense of a range of what to charge, I want you to start operating on the concept of supply and demand. So I know freelance writers who won't take any work below a certain rate. And if you have the financial ability to be that selective, that's great for you. But I'm a full-time freelance writer. My husband and I are both self-employed. We have 3 kids at home. And so money is important to me. And that brings me to the law of supply and demand. So simply put, the more work you have, the more negotiating power you have with new client leads. So if you're struggling to fill your schedule, this really means that you have some work to do. And it may mean that you need to put in some extra hours pitching and submitting proposals in order to maximize your workload. It might also mean working for a lower rate than you may like, simply to grow your portfolio and your bylines. And here's an example of why having this full workload is so important in negotiating higher rates in the future, even if you have to start with lower rates at first. So I tell the story in my ebook, The Fully Booked Freelance Writer, but during the pandemic, I wrote a lot of life insurance content. It became a really popular theme during a pandemic. And so I had all this byline work appearing in the top search results if you looked up anything related to life insurance. It wasn't the best paying work, but it was very simple SEO briefs that I could just churn out pretty quickly. A couple months down the road, a digital marketing agency reaches out to me and said, hey, we see that you write a lot about life insurance. We're launching a whole content hub for an online life insurance company. Would love to have you join a team of writers in this space. And they gave me a rate, and the rate was it wasn't bad, but it was like on par with everything else I was doing. And my schedule was fully booked, and I wasn't really looking to stress myself out for something that wasn't really exciting. And so I replied very kindly and said, thank you so much. I would need this amount it was like maybe $125, $150 more an article. This is what I would need in order to do this. I totally understand if it's not in your budget. Best wishes and thank you. And they came back to me and they did give me that amount. That came out, wound up being several months of work at a much higher rate. And I actually accidentally received someone else's contract, another writer's contract, and they were not making the amount that I had negotiated for. And so it really goes to show there sometimes is more room in the budget. And if you have that fully booked schedule that allows you to walk away from an opportunity, you really have more leverage to raise your rates. And that's how you really start getting rid of some of your lower paying clients or maybe just headachy clients and adding on ones that don't add as much stress and do pay better for your workload. Okay, so how do you set your rates when you're not at that point yet to really, be like, I'm going to walk away and do your boss babe thing? So there are a couple cheat codes that I use to negotiate when I still want to work with the client, even if we might meet in the middle somewhere. So the first way you can do this is to completely avoid being the one to offer a rate. You can simply say, Do you have a budget in mind for this project? And the reason I like starting off with this is because sometimes the client might actually have a bigger budget than you imagined and that you would have put in your rate. So it allows them, like if they have experience working with writers, or maybe like a content marketing agency might already have some parameters in mind. It's a starting point that gives the ball in their court at the beginning. But sometimes they might throw it back to you, or might just be the first one to ask, what's your rate for this? Okay, so there's a couple different negotiation tactics that I like to use. So one option is to simply give a per word or a fixed project rate and simply say, but I'm flexible if you need it. And this just kind of shows that you're willing to work with them. You want to make something work out. But honestly, most of the time when I say this, no one ever asks for that flexibility. Usually they're like, yeah, that sounds great, and we move on. And then secondly, another way is like if you don't have a lot of the project details, so you don't want to commit yourself to like giving a price, but you want to make sure you guys are in the same ballpark to move forward in the conversation and learn more, you can just say something like, my rate usually starts at X, depending on the brief, the materials you provide, and the sourcing requirements. So that way, if it turns into some kind of huge research project, or you've got to find 5 people to interview, they don't provide a brief, like then you know to put more into your proposal, and then but you know that you and the client are both like in the same ballpark of like rates that you're thinking about, even if you might have to like iron out the details further down the road. All right, if you really want to grow your freelance writing rates, I recommend becoming known as an expert in a certain field, whether it's a specific industry or a type of project like research reports or SEO or case studies. So for me, I'm known as a personal finance writer, and you can find out how I did that by watching this video.